Eerie one-shot or pad sounds that sound almost like from a horror movie are popular in hard techno. We hear such stuff on recent tracks posted by Innercade label, for example. Though by listening to some of these tracks, it's very obvious that many sounds come straight from some sample pack. If you are interested in having more original sounds in your productions, then in this sound design tutorial I will explain step by step how I transformed this bell sample into this pad. For more original hard/industrial techno sounds and presets, you can check out my hard techno reinforcement sample and serum preset pack, and for more knowledge, just keep watching. First things first, for a cinematic like pad sound I need a decent sample to work with. This sample should be long enough, let's say at least 2 seconds long. It would be fine if it also had some cool resonance or tone we could enhance. Such sounds, after appropriate processing that I will show you in a few minutes, will give us a cool and eerie texture. This bell-like sample has everything I'm looking for. If we want our pad sound to be bright, we could leave this sound as it is, but I think that for industrial techno a darker pad sound would fit better, so I will not hesitate to use a transpose knob to pitch down this sample. I'm going to pitch it down very low without using warping. The sound is probably going to be around 20 seconds long now. I'm going to use only the first few seconds though. This is because in the MIDI clip I'm creating now, I want this sound to be repeated after every 4 bars. Talking about repetitiveness, notice the gate playback mode selected. With that, I am sure that once the first MIDI note in the clip ends and when another clip starts to play, the whole pad sound will be replayed from the very beginning without any overlap. Extreme pitch change is a very easy and fundamental technique for textured sounds or cinematic-like pads. If you pick the right sample to work with from the beginning, then you could say that this is the only thing you need to do to prepare the fundamentals of your future pad. The remaining processing is going to only enhance what we have already created in the simpler. A minute ago I mentioned the pad sounds should be long enough, which is why we picked a long sample. Additionally, the volume of our pad should remain consistent over time. Right now we can see in the waveform that this sound is loud only at the very beginning and later its volume drops drastically. If I play this sound with the kick drum, the sound will get lost very quickly. Instead of having a volume that drops quickly after a short period, I would prefer something that looks somewhat like this. If you have watched my previous hard techno tutorial, where we created a whole hi-hats channel with distortion and noise, you might remember that I faced a similar problem with the hi-hats. To minimize the difference between the loud and quiet parts of the sound, I used a limiter, which is a compressor with a very high ratio that shaves any peaks. Back then I used a Soundtoys Devil Lock limiter. But because this limiter likes to distort the sound, this plugin will not fit our pad sound. Instead of a Devil Lock limiter, I can suggest a more transparent solution such as the 16 Frontier limiter or Ableton's stock limiter, which I used here. Ableton's limiter has both gain and ceiling parameters. They work together to reduce the dynamic range of the sound once the signal volume meets the ceiling/threshold level. Both gain and ceiling are crucial in limiting because they directly set the amount of limiting applied. Look ahead and release though have a minor influence over the sound. These two are associated more with the rhythm of the compressor and they set the reaction times of a compressor. In that way we can make the compressor more or less lazy. This can also affect the amount of limiting applied, but in a subtle and indirect way. If we were limiting a transient heavy signal such as a whole hi-hats channel or a percussion group channel, adjusting these would make some sense. However, in that sound we have just a single peak and the remaining part is kind of sustained, so let's just move forward. I want to show you another pitch related technique I use very often to make a sound fuller. We want this pad sound to either take more space in the frequency spectrum or to sound more eerie and unsettling. But before that, let me advertise myself quickly and just say that if you wish to have other sound design or music production subjects explained in such an easy and practical way, consider visiting my website and reading more about my private music production lessons. Free consultations are available as well. That pitch shifting technique will rely on the shifter effect. It allows pitch manipulation in 3 different modes. The first one acts nearly the same as the transpose knob in Simpler we used earlier. Though it comes with an extra parameter, along with the chorus knob, we have an additional window size parameter that modifies the pitch shifting behavior. We can also toggle the white switch to increase the stereo width of the sound with the knob that is now labeled as spread. The bottom left section adds delay, which we might not be interested in, and the middle section assigns an LFO to the chorus knob itself, modulating in time the amount of pitch transposition. This doesn't interest us too, so let's explore other shifter modes. Another cool thing is the frequency shifter mode. The frequency shifter mode, unlike the pitch one, doesn't care about the harmonic relationship. What does it mean? If I play 2 sine waves and transpose them using the pitch mode, the frequency of the second sine wave will always be 2 times higher than the frequency of the first one. In the frequency shifter mode, this relationship is interrupted, making pitch shifting sound more eerie and creepy. In the last mode, shifter operates as a ring modulator that adds and subtracts a chosen frequency from the input. When the chorus is low, it sounds like a tremolo effect. The fun begins with higher chorus values. After this quick comparison, I believe the pitch mode sounds best for our pad sound. To complete the technique, we need to blend our pitched down sound with the unprocessed one. While we could use the dry-wet knob on the bottom right, I find it more convenient to blend such effects with separate volume faders. So, I will make use of the audio effect track to create a simple parallel processing chain. In the first dry chain, no effects will be added, but in the shifter one, the same shifter with the dry-wet still at 100% will be added. To balance both signals, I will use now volume faders. The pad sound we currently have is a bit dry and it could benefit from some modulation. When it comes to modulation effects, we think of effects like flanger or phaser. However, I would like to add something more subtle, so I'm going to use a simple chorus. It duplicates the original signal 2 times and delays it in time. The delay times of these 2 copies are modulated similar to using an LFO. That's how the chorus works. The parameters directly affecting the delay times modulations are the rate and amount. If we need a chorus to be more pronounced, use the feedback knob. For minor adjustments to the sound, I can either increase or decrease the stereo width created by the chorus with the width control. Alternatively, I can use a high-pass filter switch that applies the chorus only to frequencies higher than the set value. This can help keeping low frequencies in mono. Since I plan to play this pad along with the kick drum, I will cut out the low frequencies from the whole sound later during equalization, so I won't bother with using that feature. I will also omit the warmth knob because it could add unnecessary distortion to the sound. Right before blending the effect with the dry wet, I will show you the difference between the classic and ensemble chorus modes. The ensemble mode sounds smoother as it creates 3 copies of a signal instead of 2. If you prefer your chorus to sound more generic without extra smoothness, stick to the classic mode. Sometimes such sounds need even more movement. When I play this pad as it is right now with a kick drum, I think the pad seems a bit boring. I would like to modulate it further, but as I mentioned earlier, using phaser or flanger will give a distinct sound, altering it too much. I would like to avoid that. What often works very well in my opinion is modulating the volume of the sound, and it doesn't always have to be the sidechain compression that ducks the sound whenever the kick drum is playing. We can apply other rhythmic volume automations. For simple repetitive patterns, I can recommend a combination of a shaper and utility that I always use in my tutorials. Bring both effects and pair them together using the map button, which assigns the modulation curve. I draw in the black window to, in this case, the gain knob in the utility. With these 2 values, I set the modulation range for volume. Besides that, I also create the modulation curve itself and adjust the LFO settings to the right. The sound design part of the pad creation is now finished. We will move on to some mixing to fit the sound better to the kick drum and other sounds in my project. I will start with another volume adjustment. For convenience, I use a separate utility for that. In addition to the volume adjustment, I can once again set the stereo width of the pad. To separate the volume adjustment from the stereo width adjustment, I'm using yet another utility just to make use of the width knob. It's time for equalization. There is nothing more to be done regarding the volume as we already used a limiter at the very beginning. An easy way to start the equalization is to work with both high and low pass filters. I'm definitely going to use a high pass filter to cut any low frequencies that could interfere with the kick drum's low frequencies. Sounds that revolve around extreme pitch shifting often have hollow resonances that can occupy the frequency range from 400 up to 900 Hz. I'm going to treat them during my next equalization adjustments, and I will also sculpt the high end. Do you remember when we were talking about making the sound less dry and more modulated? A few minutes ago I used a chorus for that purpose, but now with that volume modulation applied, I think the sound could be even smoother now. That's why in the end I'm going to make use of a reverb. As with the shifter effect used earlier, I want to have more control over the volume of the reverb and the dry sound itself. That is why I will use another audio effect track. I like the Sound Toys little plate reverb, because unlike a classic reverb effect from Ableton or some freeware reverb plugins I have, this Sound Toys plugin doesn't introduce any extra metallic resonances, and the reverb itself is already dark and smooth. This will perfectly suit the sound. Also, this effect is straightforward and has only 4 controls. Out of these, I'm going to adjust only the decay, which sets the reverb length. The little plate also has a modulation switch that can add a bit of modulation to the reverb. Because I want the reverb to be more static, I'm not going to use that. The mix knob blends the reverb with the unprocessed sound. Because I'm using this effect in a parallel processing chain, I want to keep it at 100%. There is also a low cut knob that can be used to remove low frequencies from the reverb itself, but because, again, I used an audio effect track here, I can use a separate equalizer with which I can not only cut the low frequencies, but also add a few other filters to sculpt the reverb precisely.